Welcome, welcome. I think we've got enough folks to get going. I'm sure we'll see more people pop in. So thanks so much for joining. I'm going to kick us off. So our Climate Connections event series, our bio edition, hosted by Entrepreneurship at UBC and Foresight Canada. So my name is Shay Sinnott. I'm the Director of Programs for Accelerate from Anywhere with Foresight Canada, that's run in partnership with Social Innovation Canada. And I'm delighted to be your host alongside Sandy Ferguson, also from Foresight, I'll give a wave, and Shannon Bard from Entrepreneurship at UBC, who you'll hear from both of them shortly. So let's start off with a sign of life. We have a pretty cozy group here, which is great. If you could give me a wave if you have your video on, or an emoji reaction if you know how to do that. If your video is off, that'd be great. So just please be conscious today of your ability to mute and unmute and video on and off. Our Climate Connections events are meant to be cozy. They're meant to be kind of engaging and interactive. And so we'll try our best to engage you just as I did right then. And then also, of course, using the chat and breakout rooms, as we'll get into shortly. So moving along, want to acknowledge the land and stewards of the land. Foresight Canada operates across Canada. So I want to honor all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people in what we call Canada. But I'm speaking to you here from Vancouver on unceded Coast Salish territories. So I acknowledge the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh peoples. And if you want to say hi, if you haven't already, where you are joining from in the country, that'd be great. If you know the Indigenous lands you're joining from, bonus points. We won't judge your spelling. And to tie it into our topic for today on bio. So something I've learned about, and certainly, Indigenous people and cultures are all different, but something that I've learned about Indigenous worldviews in relationship to land is you'll hear many Indigenous people talk about all my relations, all our relations. That's not just humans, it's also the natural world. And so what does it mean to be in relation to and treat all of the natural world as our relations, as a bit of a learning from, again, not all Indigenous peoples, but Indigenous worldviews and culture, relevant for our topic today. So moving right along. Thanks for this slide. So our purpose for our Climate Connections events are to showcase what we call real world climate related industry challenges, provide a space for kind of structured conversations so that solution seekers and innovators across academia, also small and medium-sized enterprises, can come together and really dig into these challenges together. So to do that today, we have a fantastic panel of folks. Where are they? There they are. So you're going to be hearing from them shortly. Maybe I'll just jump into that actually. Let's do a quick round of intros. So we'll do an order from Sandy, Kate, and Murali. If you could share, as we discussed, in 60 minutes or 60 seconds or less, who you are, where you are, what you're hoping to get from today, that'd be awesome.
Thanks, Shay. Really glad to be here. Thanks so much to everyone who's joined us. I'm really honored to moderate this session. The bioeconomy has been my passion for the last 17 years. I've worked in industry and not-for-profits and now as an independent consultant, both in the forestry and the hemp industries. So we have some really interesting challenges that are going to be shared with you. And I look forward to your comments and your engagement around how you see moving forward. With that, I'll turn it over to Kate.
Thank you for the opportunity to join you today. As mentioned, my name is Kate Lindsay, the Senior Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer at the Forest Products Association of Canada. Work out of Ottawa, and also joining you today from the unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. Really pleased to be here with you today. I work on a lot of different files around sustainable forest management in Canada, but increasingly looking at our contribution to Canada's net zero by 2050 target. And the forest sector has made a lot of gains in this area, but there are still some areas for improvement and areas where new markets and new technologies can definitely be deployed to really increase our contribution to greenhouse gas emission reduction. So look forward to the discussion, and I look forward to being able to answer any questions you may have as well. Thanks, Sandy.
And next up, Murali. I'm just off mute, so I'll get us.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you for the invite, and I'm really glad and happy to be here. Specifically, it's an opportunity to talk about my two important, the two topics dear to me. One is sustainable materials or anything to do with material science, and second thing is entrepreneurship. Um, I hope I will provide, you know, some of the challenges that hemp is facing as we seek lightweighting solutions for automotive interiors, as well as other areas in automotive applications. I am a manager of R&D and sustainability at CPK Interior Products. We are automotive tier company owned by Stellantis Group. I've been working in sustainable materials, renewable polymers for more than 15 years now. Um, in the company, I've evaluated natural fiber products, graphene plastics, antiviral plastics, and now I'm majorly focusing on decarbonizing the automotive interiors by materials approach. Today, I'll be speaking more about why it is important to look at hemp or any other natural fibers in the context of automotive application. So I will answer any questions you might have in that regard. Thanks again.
Thank you. Excited to dig in. I skipped ahead in our agenda here, but just noting our format. So in a minute, I'm going to say more about Foresight. I'll pitch to Shannon to hear more about entrepreneurship UBC, and then we'll be in good hands with Sandy leading the discussion. So we'll hear back to back from Kate and then Murali about their challenges, the solutions that they're seeking, and then questions, and we'll invite you to share in the chat as well. We'll break out into breakout rooms, though maybe with a small group we stay together. So we'll chat in the background about that. And then we'll aim to close by 12:30 Pacific time, no later than that. Okay, more about us at Foresight Canada. I'll keep this brief. So Foresight Canada's big, bold mission, our big, hairy, audacious goal, as we call it, is that we enable Canada to become the first G7 country to be net zero, rather. And we bring together many partners, many players in order to do that, what we call our Helix 5 approach. And in order to launch, commercialize, and scale clean technologies across Canada in order to meet our most urgent climate challenges. And this includes a range of acceleration programs. That's what Thomas and I work on. Innovation challenges and research, attracting capital, engaging investors, export development, ecosystem building, events like this. So we're doing lots of work. We're growing rapidly. Please let us know if you have any questions about our work, and we thank you for being here. I'm going to pitch it over to Shannon Bard at Entrepreneurship at UBC to say more about our partners.
Very good. Thank you very much, Shay. So my name is Shannon Bard, and I lead the Climate Venture Studio at Entrepreneurship at UBC, which is a program at the university that aims to accelerate the research translation process. So moving research from invention through to adoption through the creation of ventures and commercialization. I believe there's another slide there. Move to the next one. And the way that we do this is we have some programming to help train our scientists and engineers on entrepreneurial mindset thinking. And then we have some additional support that we have around climate solutions, as well as health and social ventures on building community and connecting our founders with industry and with thought leaders that are out in the community, because one of the biggest challenges that we have on the university side is really having a good understanding of what the market demands are. And that was the impetus for why we developed this program with Foresight, was to be able to encourage and allow for more customer discovery conversations. So there could be more insight from the part of our science-based ventures, having an understanding of what the demand is, where there are opportunities to actually solve, big problems. And I'm trying to remember if there's one more slide or if we're all done, Shay.
Nope.
Very good. All right. Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Thanks for that context too on the background. Okay, I think we're back. I'm going to pitch it back over to Sandy, and I'll just be in the background.
Thanks so much, Shay. So we're going to kick off with a really interesting set of perspectives from someone who I've known for quite a number of years, who's really leading the charge in forest products and how they can contribute to net zero. with the work she does both at FPAC and also the work that she's doing with other partners. So over to you, Kate.
Thank you, Sandy. Can go to the first slide, please. Yeah, just to give folks a sense. So I work for the Forest Products Association of Canada, FPAC, as mentioned. It's a national, or it provides a national voice for forest product companies across Canada. And these products, or these companies make an array of products. Some of them, the more conventional products, pulp paper, building materials, but increasingly innovative engineered wood products, bioenergy, bioproducts, et cetera. So a really exciting space. And so these are our member companies across Canada, many of them kind of integrated companies making innovation gains in this area around wood products and bioproducts. Next slide, please. Also want to give folks a sense, and this is part of the challenge, is so this is the forested area, forest land cover across Canada in that dark green color. You'll also see the green areas or the protected areas, and that purple, depending on how you see color, but that purple layer is what's called the it's forest tenure essentially across Canada. But even within that forest tenure, really the forest sector operates or harvests about 0.2% or 0.5%, depending on the year, of that purple area. And by law, those forests are regenerated. So that next crop of forest, if you will, is replanted. And within those areas, even within those areas actively managed, over half of the area is being set aside for conservation or includes conservation measures. So just to give you a sense of where forest management is occurring across Canada, and really where we have an opportunity to influence, both from a fire mitigation, building resiliency in Canada's forests, but also where that fiber basket is coming from for that low carbon bioeconomy of the future. Next slide. This is just a really helpful, I find a really helpful graph that put together by some of our technical partners at the National Council for Air and Stream Improvement, NCASI, who's a long time been a technical group that works to support the pulp and paper and wood products sector, both in Canada and the United States. And so they, just to help articulate Canada's forest sector's contribution to greenhouse gas emissions and ultimately net zero, these are ways you can bucket some of those opportunities. So number one is climate smart forestry. So how do we help manage forests so they sequester more carbon and release less carbon? Number two, that carbon being transferred out of the forest into a product, and where we have the most carbon gains is if those products can be locking up carbon for a long term, or be reused so that carbon is staying out of the atmosphere. Number three is greenhouse gas emission reduction. So this is through the manufacturing component of our sector. Forestry was actually a really early adopter, mostly to reduce costs, but essentially to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. So a lot of fuel switching cogeneration facilities were created in the last 10, 15 years to be off of coal and to really reduce, as mentioned, our use of fossil fuels. So we've seen a huge reduction already in scope 1, scope 2 GHG emissions, and an opportunity to actually add green electricity to the grid in some areas of Canada. Number four is optimal use of forest products. So again, finding we say increasing the utilization. So full use of that resource. So it can go to its optimal use, if that might be an engineered wood product, a mass timber beam, a building product, but the residuals go into another product, a biomaterial, pulp, or bioenergy. So really optimizing and fully utilizing that fiber resource. And five, that avoided emissions. So something that is not always captured in our own greenhouse gas emissions in the National Inventory report done by Canada is how forest products and bioenergy can help displace other more emission intensive materials. An example is if you build with wood, it can displace the amount of concrete and steel in a building, for instance. If you're using lignin as an adhesive instead of the fossil fuel derived, then it's another value added product that can displace another material that is relying on fossil fuel emissions. Next slide. Really, this is one of the, the opportunities we see for a win-win-win solution in Canada. And so if we have those markets and the product development for using the full all of the fiber of a tree that can be used, there's an opportunity to help reduce the amount of fuel. So our forests, for those, probably those of you in BC, have been affected by smoke as a result of forest fires, and we're seeing increasingly a really bad forest fire years, and that's a culmination of a drought, kind of a cascading disturbance situation where we have a heat dome, and then we have something like mountain pine beetle or forest pests that are becoming out of control in some areas. Then those dying trees become very flammable, and so it's more likely that if they do catch on fire as a result of lightning, that they will burn and those fires will be out of control. And so there's an opportunity for us to be much more deliberate and targeted about where we are managing the forest, so we can be contributing to helping communities stay safer from fire. There's a human health element, but also just helping build more resilient or contribute to more resilient forests in the future, while supporting a bioeconomy, while supporting livelihoods in Canada. So these are just a couple, and Natural Resources Canada has done a couple of slides on what are some of these opportunities for adaptation in Canada's managed forest. Next slide. Oh, that's it. So just want to say thank you. I will just say, maybe before I'm done here, because I really look forward to getting into some of the opportunities. FPAC right now is working with the Delphi group to do a kind of climate strategy or contribution to net zero roadmap. And so looking at those opportunities in the forests, at the mill and manufacturing facilities, within the product mix, as well as the transportation, and where are those mitigation pathways and opportunities to contribute, and then also what are the challenges. So really looking at, de-risking some technology around carbon capture, storage, utilization, new product development, but then also that concept of climate smart forestry moving forward. So I'll leave it there and look forward to more discussion. Thank you, Sandy.
Excellent. Thank you, Kate. As everyone can see, this is a big topic with a host of opportunity areas. Kate, I wonder from your perspective, if you want to just to focus us in, I think you mentioned that the reduction in energy emissions is an area that the forest sector has really been focusing on the last 10 years and has made some substantial gains, which often makes it really challenging to get those big additional gains. If you had to look at sort of where the next opportunity area is, what do you think is really standing out right now? And I appreciate that you're just getting started with some of the work with the Delphi group, but I think you've been pretty active in the area over the last number of years. I'd just be interested to sort of kick us off, and then really encourage some of you from the research community to jump in with your perspectives as well.
For sure. No, thanks for that. Well, I would say just on our understanding of what scenarios will be most beneficial or kind of optimized the greenhouse gas emission reductions. I'll give credit to the Canadian government has developed something called the carbon budget model, CBM. You'll hear talked about, really led by work in the Pacific Forestry Center out of Victoria. And so essentially the carbon budget model has allowed us to understand you know, what's happening in the forest as far as emissions and removals of carbon, what's happening when that carbon is transferred to harvested wood products. And then based on the life of those products, you know, how long are they holding carbon? And then what are ways we can optimize so that that carbon's not being released into the atmosphere, and recognizing that's the biogenic carbon cycle. And so as much as we can work on almost circularity with biogenic emissions and reducing the fossil fuel derived emissions, it's really that opportunity for Canada to meet net zero. And in some instances, the forest sector can be net negative in some regards. And so just, I want to just give kudos to, I mean, that was a model that's been built over 30 years at Canadian Forest Service and now used by over 25 countries. So it also gives some consistency in how different jurisdictions are looking at you know, forest sector contributions around carbon. But what we've seen is fuel switching was that big gain, right? So you're right, if we're actually a large user of energy in the forest product sector, but because we've largely switched to biomass, our greenhouse gas emissions and GHG emissions are much lower than some of the other large emitters in Canada. That has proven to be somewhat challenging given the government, in that the government's funding programs like the Net Zero Accelerator Fund has a 1 megaton threshold to apply for funding. So if we want to get at some of the remaining decarbonization opportunities like lime kiln decarbonization or fuel switching, we have 4 mills that are still very remote, don't have access to a lower carbon fuel. Trying to access some of those funding to do that, those capital upgrades. I would say the climate smart forestry is a big one. We're going to see more fires. We're going to see more forest pests. So how do we work together to share information so we can be more targeted about where harvesting and renewal is taking place and what are the markets to support the use of that low grade wood fiber. And then I would say we've been making gains in engineered wood products. So that mass timber opportunity is really there. And so we're seeing a lot of uptake, but what, you know, there's still some challenges around social license for accessing the fiber to make those really important wood products. But then also extending the life of those products where we can. There's something called unbuilding, so where we can deconstruct buildings. So those beautiful wooden beams can be repurposed and used, can have a second life or third life, and that continues to store that carbon and keep it out of the atmosphere. So those are some of the big gains, Sandy.
Yeah, those are a lot of different areas. I wonder, Kate, when you think about the role between the research community and industry, I think in Canada right now, most of our forest products companies don't have large research groups. So it really means that they need to have very strong partnerships with universities and research organizations. Any thoughts on that? And again, I invite those of you in the audience to chime in with your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. We've been, I would say as a sector, you know, there are a lot of partnerships with academic institutions. There is also FP Innovations, which has been, you know, an organization that has provided technical, you know, support in different areas and now is amalgamated into that one forest products innovation group. But I think there's more opportunities to be ahead of the curve where we can, so companies can better understand what are the investments that need to be made, where is technology available, and just the application could be, you know, moved from one part of the country to another part of the country. But I will say where we see leadership in other jurisdictions like Finland and Sweden, it's just a more coordinated role that academic institutions, government, and industry are playing together. And often where they're having secure fiber supply, so knowing that there's space to do those, the R&D and technology upgrades and application and the fiber will be there for those applications should the private sector make those investments.
You know, one of the things, I'm just going to do a small shout out for the BioNext program that we launched last year, which is one of the foresight programs where we bring together entrepreneurs who typically are at an early stage trying to find solutions. And we had a number that were in the forestry sector, as well as agriculture and municipal waste streams. And what we try and do is help equip them, along with some of the other accelerator programs, with opportunities to speak with people both from the customer side and also from the industry, partnering, key technologies. So if any of you are interested, we'll be launching our second series in January. And I think in Canada, you know, it's fair to say we've had a smaller number of those entrepreneurs working closely with the strategics, like the members of Forest Products Association of Canada. But I think people are starting to understand that we need to try and generate more of that interaction faster if we're going to get to net zero in a more effective way. I don't know, Kate, any thoughts just on that? There's this whole continuum of research and academics, early stage entrepreneurs, and then, you know, the larger strategic companies.
Absolutely. And one thing that we're hearing is there's opportunities to work across sectors and to bundle where we can. So there can be those regional hubs or strategic hubs where there might be a number of facilities that could be working together on a project that could meet the one, for instance, the 1 megaton reduction potential and have access, let's say, to the Net Zero Accelerator Fund, whereas one single pulp mill or wood product facility wouldn't meet that threshold on their own. So I think that's great, and we're starting to work. I know in our shop in Ottawa, working across sectors with the agriculture sector, and then where there might be users. So for instance, other, you know, steel facilities, cement facilities also want to decarbonize. So if they have access to biomass feedstock from forestry and agriculture, it's a decarbonization opportunity for them as well. So we need to be finding those networks and where it can be supported with R&D and technical support. I think there's a great opportunity there moving forward.
I think that's part of the reason why we struggle a bit is these collaborations are not necessarily easy to put together. However, an area that I've been increasingly excited about is challenges. So putting out there, you know, what is a very big challenge for any particular industry, and what are some solutions, and really keeping it open to all those partners in the supply chain. So we've already had at least one of them in the bio area. It's ongoing right now. It closes this Friday. So if you're not already engaged with the CMPC Pulp and Paper Sludge Challenge, it's probably getting a bit tight. But we will be looking at other ones. And I think it's a way of more creatively getting some of the different partners together, because our current structures, in my view, are sometimes a little bit rigid and don't necessarily pull folks together. I don't know if those of you in the research community who are participating today have the same feeling. You know, how can we get some of these collaborations going more effectively?
I think Murali was going to chime in too. I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, no, I just had one question for Kate. Is FPAC, your association, does it work in closely with any automotive or any plastic manufacturers for, you know, to adopt forest raw materials for the manufacturing?
My awareness is that there has been some research done, particularly in the automotive side, where wood fiber can be used as a lighter alternative for dashboards and things like that. And Sandy might actually know more about that as far as past collaborations. We are engaged with contacts at the Chemical Association, for instance, that's a real opportunity to use essentially waste products of the pulping. So lignin is a good example where it can be extracted from the pulping process and becomes a bio-based adhesive that can be added to other applications. And my understanding is some of those conversations are more advanced. Well, there's a couple of facilities producing lignin. Some of our members are producing lignin, but other applications there. And then also in forest products as an alternative to single-use plastics. So areas, and this is a big switch. There's investments being made around food packaging that can be bio-based rather than petrochemical. So yeah, so there's definitely some cross-pollination, but probably an opportunity for more, Murali.
Thank you.
Murali, you couldn't have done a segue any better to now moving on. Kate, thank you so much. And thank you for your thoughts. And I really encourage people to just stay abreast of the work that the Forest Products Association of Canada is doing. Check out their website, check out their videos. There's a lot of excellent information, and in order to move forward, the industry needs to have these close research partnerships. So Kate, thanks for sharing kind of a very big picture and showing where some of the key areas for engagement can happen. So with that, I'm gonna move on to Murali. And Murali, it's interesting because there was quite a bit of work done maybe a few years ago to try and engage more of the automotive sector with the forest fiber community. I don't know where it's gone. There seems to be also parallel tracks with the agriculture industry, and we're going to talk about one of them now. But as you know well, there's many different routes to solutions. Some of them may be from forest fiber, some may be from agricultural residues, and of course there's a new and pretty interesting opportunity around better utilization of hemp from an industrial fiber perspective. So I think with that, I'm just going to ask you to share a few slides just to set the stage as we talk about decarbonization for the automotive industry.
So, yeah. Okay. Gonna put the slide here or start with this. So basically today I'm going to talk about how hemp can be used as an opportunity to decarbonize the automotive. When I saw the audience, I thought maybe give a bit of a background why it is necessary. So it is like, all of the automotive companies or OEMs looking to decarbonize the production of their vehicles. And because they contribute more than 16% of emissions comes from this sector, so it is very important. And EVs are in the right direction, and this is I like this slide from Accenture because it basically gives a snapshot of what happens when you switch from ICE to the EVs, and when the EVs, the energy comes from the clean energy sources, right? So most of the decarbonization happens with that two changes. But the actual, if we want to achieve almost 100% circular, 100% decarbonization, then we have to include circular economy innovations. Particularly, material emissions will dominate, which I'll show in the next slide. Again, when the vehicles are made, right now the majority of the emissions comes from operations of the vehicle because it's ICE. But when we switch to electric vehicle, and especially the clean grid, then the material emissions becomes more dominant, and the OEMs have already started paying attention to this, and they're asking material manufacturers, producers, researchers to work on this area, right, to reduce as much as footprint. So it becomes very important for material group to focus on this. So next slide. So if you look at different OEMs, North American, European, they have very aggressive goals. Everyone wants to be carbon neutral by 2039. But again, if you look back the previous two slides, previous two data points, it is very important. The materials have to be part of the solutions. Just the EV, just the changing the ICE to EV, it will not cut right. So materials are very, very important. As Kate was earlier speaking, we have to look beyond fossil sources. Next slide. So next slide, please. So really the two ways to work on materials is either you work on decarbonized products, which means low carbon materials. Here we look into renewables, bio-based materials, natural fibers that would basically replace most of the fossil-based resources. Even that includes fillers like carbon fibers, glass fibers replaced with natural fibers. So there is a lot of ask from low carbon materials from the OEMs in coming days. And material circularity. So this is basically, focusing on building a monomaterial. We call it monomaterial because right now every product you see in the car has 3 or 4 different material kinds. We try to make it singular material so that we can easily recover or recycle them and close the loop and improve the overall footprint. Next slide, please. So broadly, right now there are 2 different materials. One is lightweighting, another one is eco-friendly materials, right? I'll focus on lightweighting because that's where the focus is today. Earlier, lightweighting was a trend. It was like, basically it was tied to the CAFE standards, but today it has become a requirement as OEMs move very aggressively in achieving decarbonization efforts or decarbonization goals. So here, basically, we want to replace metals with plastics or lightweight materials, and we look at carbon fibers, we look at natural fibers, and so on. That's where the industry is moving right now. Next slide. Natural fibers are not that far as of today. There are few vehicles which have door panels, instrument panels. They are made up of canaf, jute, and most of these programs are they have appeared in they are manufactured or are available in Europe, right? And in North America, it is very less. That's the challenge because we don't have any consistent quality fiber available in North America. And right now there are some programs, but the fiber has to be shipped either from Asia or from Europe. So you can imagine trying to ship a low density material from Europe or Asia, the material footprint will be compromised. Although you still get lightweight, but overall footprint will be compromised. That's where industry is looking at getting that supply chain built within North America. Next slide, please. Yeah, this was a slide just wanted to show like number of programs out there in Europe. The dashboards, they are mostly made from hemp and canaf in Europe. Jaguar, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, like a lot of these German OEMs and European OEMs have taken footprint. And I just wanted to show this is real, right? Like it has put it into high-end vehicles as well. So people often think that if you use natural fibers or natural materials, they will be inferior, but no, they have to meet the performance and the cost. Sometimes because these are luxury vehicles, cost might not be an issue, but still the performance cannot be compromised, especially if it goes on a dashboard, because you have a passenger airbag over there. So they have done that in Europe, but we are not able to do it in North America yet. Yeah, next slide. So hemp is a multi-purpose crop. Probably if you are working in this area, you would know by now. So our focus is on really the end product, hemp hurd or the hemp fiber. Right now, hemp fiber is a little bit used in the textiles, but it can be a great replacement for glass fiber or carbon fiber, to that matter, if it engineered properly or correctly, right? And hemp hurd can be used for an injection, replacing an injection grade, injection molding grade resin. And the beauty is the density is very less, meaning it would be almost 50% less weight or even more than that compared to glass or carbon fiber plastic. Next slide, please. So advantages, hemp, it's lightweighting, like I said, it's low density, almost 0.4 gram per cc compared to 2.5 gram per cc of glass fiber, which means it is 3 times heavier or 2.5 times heavier compared to talc, which is heavily used today. It has to be mined, right? So it is also 2.5. Again, this is 0.4 gram per cc. It is renewable. You don't have to do any mining or anything like that. It is a very renewable natural fibers, and it grows in a very less time. My understanding is it grows or anywhere between 90 to 100 days. You can have a crop. It also helps to improve the soil quality if you grow it so that the subsequent crop could be better yield. You will get a better yield in subsequent crops. You don't have to use any pesticide, and it offers superior mechanical strength. If you look at the density and the mechanical strength, it is pretty much comparable to glass fiber or carbon fiber, but at the same time, the weight will be 50% low. And there are some LCS studies. Companies have done that. It is almost 60% less emission if you use hemp plastic compared to talc filled. But if you compare it to glass filled, it would be even more. And it offers versatile manufacturability, which means it can be used in different techniques that already exist in the industry, like injection molding and we call needle punching as well. So next slide, the last slide probably, yeah. So the opportunity here is right now, we see it as it can improve lightweighting. It can also improve sound absorption, which is very, very important for EVs. At the same time, it can offer the low carbon footprint. But there are still some issues that we are trying to solve. It can absorb, the water absorption is a lot higher compared to the fossil-based non-hydrophilic fillers. Sometimes it can create odor, so one has to work on that. And because it's hydrophilic material and most of the fossil-based or hydrophobic, there won't be any chemical compatibilities. Therefore, the material, the product can fail. So chemistry has to be done to improve that. So what we would like to see or what it takes for automotive OEMs to adopt more of these products in North America is work on supply chain, make it available very close to the manufacturing or very close to the the assembly plants. And researchers, if somebody is working in this area, they have to pretty much distinguish between hemp hurd and hemp fiber. Hemp hurd goes into injection molding, and the fiber goes into needle punched non-oven kind of application. And one of the big asks there are 4 manufacturers of, basically right now they get the material from Europe or Asia, and they do mats, but in US, most of them are in US. When I asked them, why don't you use North American fiber or hemp fiber, I was told that they tried some hemp from Alberta area, and they was not clean, and they were not able to get consistency in quality, right? So that is the big issue. And going forward, if somebody is able to solve this issue, then I think there is a big opportunity for hemp. And if there is any research program has to be developed, I think it is very, very important to involve in the industry, either OEMs or tiers, so that they understand what is expected of from these kind of materials. Yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much it. All open for any questions if you have.
Thanks, Murali. Excellent overview, and you did frame out where the opportunities are and where some of the challenges are. You know, hemp is a relatively new industry in Canada, and I think internationally. Of course, as most of you who are attending know, hemp is the same as the cannabis plant, but has different strains, varietals, and there's a host of them that are approved by our various regulating bodies. Where we haven't seen as much application, we've certainly seen lots of it in oils, food products, etc., is in the industrial area, and yet this is an area where there's a huge demand. Murali, are you aware of any centers of excellence around hemp? Because, you know, this often is a coalescing opportunity. Kate spoke about FP Innovations, which has acted a bit as the Center for Research, certainly at least for some of the larger companies. Are you aware of any hemp centers of excellence here in Canada?
The only group that comes to my mind is a group based in Alberta. It is to be called Biocomposites Group. Basically, they kind of worked on hemp, making body panels and stuff like that. I never saw their product being commercialized so far. But I was also told NRC was, when we started working on this application in 2017, I was told that NRC might look into this. The group biomaterials group in Boucherville there. I haven't heard anything since then.
Are any of our researchers who are on the line or university participants, are any of you working in either agriculture or hemp?
And again, a way to engage is to raise your hand, or you can chime in the chat if you like, or a thumbs up.
Okay, so nobody's specifically in this area. Maybe to trigger for those of you that haven't or are more broadly interested in decarbonization. Murali, in your experience, what is the best way for industry and the research community to partner? Is it better to try and apply for things like NSERC grants? Is it better to get a larger initiative with multi-universities? Where have you seen some gains in the industry academic partnership world?
I have, in my experience, I've seen like whenever there is a multidisciplinary approach in developing products, we've seen success, especially because when I say multidisciplinary is like even within the university working, like, someone working on the LCA aspect, somebody working on the engineering, somebody working on the chemistry, and from the outside university is usually the tiers, the material suppliers, and somebody who can provide like hemp producers as well. One example I would like to give is, there are few innovations in Ontario where people have taken beet straw and made a biocomposite out of it, and Ford has commercialized it in one of their vehicle. And the most another recent one was from University of Waterloo. Another one was basically they again Ford worked. University of Guelph and other participants have worked in utilizing coffee shafts, the waste product from the coffee bean. They took from McDonald's. Whenever they roast the waste product to the coffee skin, which is called coffee shaft, they converted into a biocomposite out of it, and again it has been commercialized on a Lincoln vehicle for lighthousing. Some of the products have come out, but we haven't seen that extent in this continuous fibers application yet. I've been speaking to FP Innovations quite a bit on this. The problem, what I found with FP Innovations is, not with FP Innovations, but the technology is like they say they have a technology, but it's not commercially available yet, right? So whenever we want to do some trials, we would require quite a larger quantities, and we are not able to receive them. So there are some gaps in commercializing technologies as well. So that's why it is always better to involve the end user whenever you go for a grant or whenever you go and develop a new product. That's my experience.
There's a bit of I think this goes to just commercialization in general. Murali, you've hit something I think that's quite important for a lot of companies as they're going through their growth spectrum. When they first start producing small quantities, it's enough sample to maybe do a test, but not a full-scale trial. To raise money, you have to show that you can achieve certain milestones. And in between the two of them, it doesn't always match up. So, you know, I think we have to understand, certainly in the Canadian ecosystem, that we need to accept that these stages, especially when we're looking at product replacement, in order to ensure that our end users are going to be able to participate in a meaningful way, we need to have meaningful volume. So it's a bit of an education process, I think, both with end users, researchers, and investors. I think sometimes investors are expecting something to happen very quickly, and certainly when you're talking about a new product area, it's very difficult. It's hard to show them lab results and get them very excited.
Yes, yes.
So Hayder, did you have you're just interested in the hemp area. Did you have any comments?
I know
No pressure.
Hayder had been going back and forth in the chat, and he mentioned he'd had a light bulb moment, but didn't want to put you on the spot, Hayder. Oh, you're saying your mic doesn't work right now. Yeah, if you can share it in the chat, that would be great. We love to hear that people are getting inspired by these conversations, and that's leading to, you know, inventive ideas. So yeah, we look forward to reading the text.
The other issue with hemp is, where does it grow best? So, you know, my understanding of hemp, it grows very well in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, more in the prairie provinces, pretty well in Ontario. And there's also some areas in British Columbia that are experimenting with it. So it's a fairly broad range of provinces. So, you know, again, ensuring that people from different universities are able to collaborate is often a big challenge. And if our basket of feedstock is as far away as Alberta, there's just many more ways that it can face contamination on the way to being available to a third party. So, you know, those are some of the other challenges. Murali, are you familiar with the BQNC network? I think you've probably just heard about it with the work we're doing together on the Bioindustrial Innovation Canada board.
Yeah, I was aware of it, but also 2 weeks back I was giving a talk at CRIBE, Center for Bioeconomy Research, or Research in Bioeconomy. I met Murray there, Murray McLennan, who is BQNC. He's going to give me a call and talk a little bit about it. But that's what I know about BQNC.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Because they're trying to look at feedstock quality, quantification, and standards. And those are, I think, all the things that you've been talking about that are a gap for the automotive industry to be able to use those products.
Yeah. And I forgot to say one thing, that I have been watching out a couple of companies out of Alberta. One company is hemp plastic, they say. I don't think they're in production yet, but they are raising money to scale up their production. It's Hemp Plastic Corporation or something like that. They have been asking me, like, you know, they've been talking to me. And there is another company just focusing on hemp quality, which is Canadian Hemp Corporation or something like that. They both are from Alberta.
Yes, I think they might even be interconnected companies. And, you know, this is an area that's ripe for collaboration with the research community, because I know that one of the challenges with hemp use is just being able to process it and break it down into the forms that are very specific for the particular application. And to me, that seems like a perfect project to be done in a research environment. But
yes.
As far as I know, we don't have any major programs going right now. I believe in 2013 to 2018, there was an automotive partnership with hemp. And part of the problem when groups run out of funding is, you know, what happens to the next phase. So I think in Canada, this is an area where we need to do much better. How do we keep making progress when funding runs out? You know, how do we move that along?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a very long message here. Just let me have a quick look.
I just
Okay.
read it, Sandy, so I can just chime in. It's just Hyder following up about, so Hyder's currently in our Kickstarter program, launching a circularity marketplace, and hadn't quite thought about hemp and how much is grown here, as I think Hyder's in BC. So, yeah.
Okay. And Hyder, I'm just wondering if you're in British Columbia or one of the other provinces.
I believe he is. Ontario. Okay, never mind.
You're in BC, right?
No, Ontario.
Oh, in Ontario. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, great.
we do have a growing hemp industry. And the interesting thing about hemp in Ontario is that's where our automotive industry is. So we're much closer to the end user markets there.
Yeah. Right now we used to source from what is that? South Carolina and Idaho, I think, and Indiana. They have pretty much these three companies. They're called FlexFarm and Polyvillis. Polyvillis actually set up a shop from. They are big in Germany, but they set up a shop in South Carolina. But they right now all they do is bring fibers from overseas and produce the product here. And when we put the LCA calculation, we won't see much of gain there. So it is an opportunity for sure.
Okay, I think we're moving to just the open part of the conversation, just Q&A that anyone would be interested in asking either of our very distinctive yet on the same theme. This is all about how do we move to net zero, huge goal societally for our government, for our industries. And we need all of our industries, whether they be forestry, agriculture, chemicals, cement, to be making progress in this area. And we need to do it, I think, faster than we've done it to date. COP is coming up. I forget which COP. Who remembers which COP we have coming up? Shannon.
27.
27, thank you. And frankly, the alarm bells are going out there. So, we can't afford to waste time. Shannon, did you have something else you wanted to jump in with?
I did. I was wondering if the speakers could address the question of circular economy. So it's when we're thinking about using biomaterials in replacing current materials, it's not only using that as the source material, but also what is going to be the end life of that product and how easy it is it to set up a system in order to recover that material so it can be used for another high value purpose after the fact. And maybe both of the speakers sort of could address some of the challenges around that and what would need to be done to set up that system from the forefront.
Okay, why don't we start with Kate and then we'll go to Murali. Murali, was this to answer this question or a new one? I just want to keep track.
No, I just saw, I see a guy from BGS. I think it's Biographene Solutions. And I just wanted to see if he has any thoughts on, where they make graphene from bio or forest sources. I just wanted to see if he can add anything to us or anything to this forum.
Hi, good afternoon.
Okay, sorry, so we'll go to Michael and then we'll go back to the big question again for both Kate and Murali around circular economy. Okay,
Sure.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, hi
Nice to
everyone.
see
You as well. A quick answer is that we originally started 2 years ago. Our input source to make graphene was wood waste, but our process has changed significantly, I can suggest, in about the last 10 months. So our input is no longer wood, it's another organic source, only because we're deriving much better quality graphene from that source. And for those of you that don't know what graphene is, please put up your hand, but I'm pretty sure everyone's very familiar. Today's session has been very, very interesting from a hemp perspective. We're doing things with graphene in other materials as well, much like hemp, just improving material strength. I can stand on my soapbox for the next half hour for the purpose of this. Not so much. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, Murali.
Yeah, okay, he's kind of answered the question, yeah.
Okay, sorry, Shannon, I hate to ask you, but maybe just quickly summarize your question, just the frame up you wanted around
Absolutely.
Circular bioeconomy.
Absolutely. So in this discussion about replacing current materials with new biomaterials, I think we need to think about what the end of life of those materials are going to be, and how can we have a system put into place that those materials can be reused or recycled, but for a high value purpose, and not just end up composted or in a landfill. And so I was hoping that both of the speakers could talk about some of the challenges of setting that up, and what the opportunities would be to set that up from the forefront rather than to play catch up as we've done sort of in the past on the back end. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Shannon. I can go first. It's a really good question, and something that we've been looking at. You know, we often talk about the low carbon economy, but really, you know, globally, it needs to be a shift to a circular economy and circularity. And so where we see opportunities, so I mentioned one, when there's a building going up with wood, that and there are some policies in place that discourage landfilling of those products. So it encourages organizations and builders to reuse those products as much as possible. But that's really is starting to be thought of in advance in the mass timber market, is how these buildings are being constructed, panels, and you know, they actually kind of go up like Lego blocks. There's a lot of thought going into how those buildings might be deconstructed, and there's an organization actually out of Victoria, BC called Unbuilders, and I encourage people to look at them, because what I'm hearing is that people wish there was more of these organizations. So right now there is a challenge in just this scale, industrial scale of these types of organizations, to go and do this, kind of pulling out the wooden components of a building and giving them a second life. But there's definitely an opportunity for that moving forward. And so that would exactly speak to increasing the life of those products, particularly because they're storing carbon, which is such a great way to maintain that carbon storage. We know that in the paper business, we've been recycling paper, and Canada has one of the highest recycling rates of paper products globally, but we're starting to max out at around 68, 70%. And it is really difficult because you need systems in place to encourage people to recycle. And so there are companies like Cascade, which is a paper manufacturing company that actually goes to businesses, right, and sets up the collection infrastructure so they can get access to that recycled paper, because they're transforming it into another product using that paper. And we know that paper can be used about 6 or 7 times until it's no longer has the fiber strength. But so still there's opportunities for recycling. And then there is an opportunity, we want to avoid landfilling wood, but there's still an opportunity for that to be converted into bioenergy. And if that bioenergy is linked to a carbon capture type of opportunity, so this is happening in Canada, again, there's an opportunity to keep it out of the atmosphere. So the BECCS technology, bioeconomy, carbon capture and storage, CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and sequestration. So one of our members has a mill in St. Félicien, Quebec, and so carbon is captured and it injected into a greenhouse that's growing cucumbers that supply Quebec grocery stores, as well as waste heat. So it's just another opportunity. It's not like I guess it's borderline circular economy, but at least it's those products are really being maximized their full life. So I hope that helps, but I think it's a great topic about more opportunities for circularity.
And yeah, wonderful. And actually, I just wanted to reinforce the comment that you made about the end builders. And maybe what we need to do is, now we're talking about hemp, sort of looking to the past. That was a crop that was used extensively for a very long period of time. We're going back to it now. The same thing with our, recovering building materials. So with the end builders, one of the big challenges is that it's hard to actually deconstruct these some of the more modern buildings and take them apart and be able to use them again. But if we design the pieces as you suggested in ways that they can be reused, it would be similar to a barn by my brother's house that was taken down a couple months ago by a group of Mennonites. And because it wasn't made with any nails, they could just deconstruct the whole barn, and they built it on another site, even though it's a 100-year-old barn. So thank you very much.
Maybe I can just add in one other thing. I mean, there's a real role for policy mandates here. And here in British Columbia, we have a low carbon fuel standard, which has been increasingly raising the bar or lowering the bar, depending how you look at it, for carbon intensity. So that has really encouraged innovation because you get a higher credit level if you can get your carbon intensity reduced. And while it doesn't necessarily always directly relate to circularity, quite often it does. So, there's a big role here for policy, certainly in the areas where we have identified that we need to make some rapid reductions in GHG emissions. And one of those, of course, is in the transportation industry. Murali, did you want to comment on circularity? You had a bit of that in your presentation, and certainly the automotive industry has been an early adopter in that area in some areas. So be very interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, when it comes to circularity, especially for automotive application, at least my understanding is mostly on plastics or materials of that kind. We look at two things: whether the number one is whether the molecule or the plastic or the material, is it new, right? Is it a new molecule, or it doesn't fit the, it is not replacing any existing fossil-based resource. If it is totally new, we would ask what is the recyclability of it, right? Does it fit? If I try to recycle it, does it affect the existing value chain, right? So that's the one thing we ask the suppliers to provide that kind of data, like how many times it can be recyclable, and what kind is the property retention, those things, if it is a new molecule. If it is a same chemical, let's say there are a lot of polymers like polyethylene or polypropylene. Right now they're made from fossil based, but there are companies like Braskem. They actually make these polypropylenes from alcohol, from sugarcane or cellulosic ethanol and stuff like that. So these are basically same molecule, but the source of the raw material is, one is fossil, another one is bio-based. In that case, it is pretty easy, right? It is pretty easy to put back into the loop. So what is happening in the industries right now, all the fossil-based plastics companies or suppliers, they have been working extensively to prove, how to put back them to the loop, right? So that is been big ask. So some of them are doing through the recycling process. Some of them are doing actually taking them and cracking them back to the basic building blocks and putting back into the loop. So there has been significant improvement, but again, it all comes to whether it is a new molecule or existing molecule that we're talking about. And in terms of policy for circular economy, what we still have to see is there is no mandate that the automakers or any companies that use plastics in their products to have a certain amount of bio content or recycle content in the products, right? If that comes up, if there is a change in policy in that regard, I think the circular economy will, it'll be accelerated in adoption. But nonetheless, there is a significant efforts in the direction.
We seem to have made some moves forward around plastics reduction. However, we don't really have a plan out there in Canada. And I think that's an area where it's been recognized we need to make, again, a little more progress, a little more quickly. Does anybody else want to comment just on plastics reduction in Canada? Someone who might be a bit more knowledgeable about the current state of play than I am? Nope. Okay. Okay. Any other final questions? I think I want to turn it over. We're going to wrap up. We had a small group today, so we don't need to take all of your time. And I really want to thank our presenters for sharing your perspectives. I'm hoping that Shay and Thomas will be able to have these very short presentations in some way on our website so that it can encourage some further dialogue. Maybe you can let us know how that's going to be handled. And thank you to all our participants. I think we need to keep talking about these topics. We need better understanding of what the bioeconomy really means and how we can get there. And so thanks very much for your contributions, all of you, to that today. So with that, I'm going to stop and hand it over to whoever's going to quarterback us home. Oh, wait, I have one thing I wanted to say. I kept meaning to say it, and this is a shout out to UBC. There is a very prestigious group called the Bioproducts Institute, which is led by Orlando Rojas, a very exciting group that's coming together, doing work across a whole variety of feedstock areas, and hopefully will be a big contributor going forward to some of these replacement products. So just a little shout out to one of our homegrown Vancouver groups. With that,
Thanks, Andy.
Over to Foresight.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks again to Kate and Murali. That was awesome. And for all of you that tuned in, thanks also to our partners at Entrepreneurship at UBC and Shannon Bard for tuning in. And you can see on my screen, we have 2 more Climate Connections event series events happening before the end of the year. So agriculture, the agriculture edition is happening on November 15th, and the following day, water on November 16th, same time. So I think we should share a link to register in the chat if that hasn't already happened. That'd be great. And then following up on your points, Andy, about sharing presentations, perhaps we could send a follow-up email to those that registered team with links to the slides. That might be easiest. And with that, thanks so much. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.